All right. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you.
Hi.
Well, listen, first of all, I should tell everyone that Sarah is not only the author of the Singer Sisters, but she's my daughter-in-law. And I suppose, there could be some kind of issue, I don't know, showing favoritism to a member of the family. I agonized over this,
Mm.
and I decided I didn't want to deprive the world of my interview of you just because you happen to be my daughter-in-law. So let's get
Thank you.
you're, you're welcome. Uh, let's get to your book, The Singer Sisters. And as I'm sure at least some of our viewers know, this is a novel that you wrote. It came out this past August, and it is about a folk singing family. But why don't you tell us briefly what the novel is about?
Sure. So it's about two generations in one family, and the narrative kind of goes back and forth between the generations. And it begins in the 1990s, sort of in the alt rock era, with a young rock and roll, wannabe rock and roll star named Emma, whose parents were both kind of folk, like second tier folk luminaries, folk rock luminaries in the 60s and 70s. And her aunt also was in a band with her mother. So she comes from this whole family with musical legacy. So a lot of a book is about kind of your about family legacy and not just sort of what your family gives you emotionally, but also what they leave you artistically and with taste and influence. And so her Emma's mother, Judy, is the other main character, and she was a very influential songwriter in the 60s, but also kind of a difficult person and left the music scene, has stopped performing in public. And Emma has a lot of feelings about that and a lot of anger towards her mother about why her mother didn't encourage her to pursue a music career as well. Her mom really wanted her to go to college and have like a backup plan. And there's a lot of conflict between the two of them. So she's out there performing alone, and no one in her family is in the audience supporting her. And the novel kind of goes forward with Emma's story as it also goes back in time to show us Judy's story and explain a bit more about why she is the way she is, why she is this kind of mercurial and protective of her daughter as she is. And that's the first half of the novel is explaining their stories. And there's obviously there's some secrets and there's some family drama in the past that Emma doesn't know about. And then the lens of the book widens also to include Sylvia, who is the other member of the Singer Sisters, Judy's sister, and also some other folks as well, including Dave, who's Emma's dad and Judy's husband, and who's also a rock star. So it's a family drama. It's a family saga. It's and there's but it's really also a music story because they all write songs and their lyrics are and their song and their discography are all part of the book as well. And the lyrics, of course, include songs that they wrote about each other and to each other and for each other. Some more obviously and some more obliquely. So there we're kind of as readers looking at the lyrics and figuring out what they mean at the same time as the characters are. Um, Lots of concert scenes. It's all very musical. Um, while also being this New York, and they're Jewish, I should say. So it's also a New York Jewish family story.
Yeah, all families seem to have parents that want their kids to have backup plans for their life's work. And
Right.
somehow these backup plans are always drab and as what the kids want to do. So, of those two themes, family life in a Jewish New York family and music, which of course are related, but which came first in your thinking about the novel and in your writing the novel itself?
That's a great question. I think really the music came first. I mean, I was inspired by many things over the years. Including everyone's talking about the Bob Dylan movie right now. I read the memoirs of Susie Rotolo, who was Bob Dylan's girlfriend during the Village years, and I read it like, when it came out. So it was a long time ago, like 20 years ago. And it really stuck with me. And like being a woman, the her description of being a woman during those years was really interesting and something I never read before. But the sort of direct inspiration was a family folk concert, a couple that I went to, and I was really, really captivated by the idea of um it was at Pete Seeger's 90th birthday party at Madison Square Garden. The McGarrigle sisters came out with Kate McGarrigle's kids, and they were doing these folk standards, and it was just extremely captivating. And I loved the idea of a whole family that were in the same business, and that business was artistic expression, and they were, expressing themselves, in their family relationships while also performing together. Um, but I think for me, I had to have the understand the music and the history of the family's music first before I could figure out their relationship. So if you ever, I mean, I don't know, I have it somewhere. I have a notebook with my very first drafts in it, and it's all sort of like, and then they made this album, and then, and, and like the 60, and it does have the beginning of the character relationships. But what I really had wanted to sketch out was like how these people fit into the canon, like because they're made up family, and how they fit into the different music styles that were happening at various times, and like what kind of records they made and how big those records were, and which of their records were a failure and which were a big success. And then from there, I did like a lot of the work of sort of fleshing out the emotional relationships and figuring that out. But the songs and the albums and things actually came first.
Yeah, I just want to say about Rutola, Susie Rutola. She, as I'm sure you know, does not appear as a character in the movie. There's someone else who
Like
has the
based
same
on her.
initials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because, at least according to Dylan,
Dylan requested that that her
right, because she's no
yeah.
longer alive, sadly. So actually, on that point, if anybody wants to make a big movie about me, like 20 years or 30 years from now, I hereby give you my permission, as long as you spell my name right. Uh, so, but you know, one of the things that really impressed me about your novel are the lyrics in the novel, and let's talk a little bit about that because after all these years, I never knew that you were a songwriter until I had the pleasure of reading the novel. So tell us about that.
Neither did I. They really, like, this is gonna sound very cheesy, but they really kind of just came out. I mean, I did, the thing that I tend to say is like I did somewhat seriously, I would say semi-seriously study poetry, and I wrote a lot of poetry in as a teenager, and then in college I did do so like intensive poetry workshops with the great D.A. Powell, who's a wonderful poet. But I don't think that if it hadn't been for the fact that he was a great teacher, I don't think I would have stuck with it at all because I don't I'm fiction is really where I belong, but song lyrics turns out kind of merge the two. They merged a little bit of poetry and a little bit of fiction, and you can be kind of corny in a way that you can't with poetry and like play with cliches and stuff, which I think was really fun and made it easy. And I did revise some of the lyrics, but a lot of them are kind of what I originally wrote. And it was just, I think also another thing that influenced the lyric writing was that, and I don't know what it's like to be a young person now discovering music, on you're listening to it on Apple Music or Spotify probably on your phone, but for us in the 90s it was we would go to HMV or Sam Goody or one of these record stores and buy a CD, and then each CD had a booklet with lyrics, which was just like how the albums were in the on vinyl. And we would put the CD on and read the lyrics while we were listening to the music. That was a huge part of it. So I think I spent so much time reading lyrics, um, as a kid, and when we started using the internet, I would look up. There was a website called the Book of Bob that my friends and I were obsessed with, which was an online total reference of all Bob Dylan lyrics. So I like used to come home from school and like queue up the Book of Bob and just like read Bob Dylan lyrics. So I do think that some of it was just all kind of in my subconscious when it came time to write the lyrics for this book.
Well, that's a good book to read if you're interested in song lyrics, because they're probably the best song
Uh,
lyrics ever written.
yeah.
By the way, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Beatles, one of the many, many things that they initiated, started putting lyrics on their album covers. And I think that was the first time that anyone put lyrics on their album covers. I mean, there could have been someone earlier that I don't know about, but Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, they put the lyrics, and it was probably McCartney's idea, but who knows? It could have been Lennon's. For all I know, it was Ringo's. But, they were so proud of the lyrics. They knew the lyrics were different. They weren't just song lyrics, and they
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that people heard the lyrics and understood the lyrics and got the lyrics, so they put them on the back of a cover. And that's why by the time you were buying
Right.
CDs in the 90s, it seemed like, yeah, that's the way vinyl is. Those lyrics, I thought when I read the book, cry out for music. And tell us about that. Are you actually turning them into songs? Are you collaborating with a mysterious songwriter that we don't know about, but we'll find out about? Or is that up for grabs in case Paul McCartney is listening to this podcast or watching this video?
No, I have a friend who did do little demos for two of the songs, but she has not done anything with it since. So, and it was really fun for me to listen to just, I think she feels that they're not like well produced enough to put out into the world, but she did write nice melodies for the lyrics, and it was really cool. But the rest are all up. I mean, they're all up for grabs, really. So still,
And how,
if
and
you
how
feel
many?
like it, Paul, go for it.
Okay, maybe. It's been a while since I, wrote a song. Actually not that long, maybe just a couple of years. Although actually, apropos of getting someone to write music for lyrics, I wrote a lyric called "I Fell in Love with a Robot," which is not the most profound lyric in the world, and that has nothing to do with Tina. That wasn't a slight at my wife, but I wasn't in the mood to write the music myself. I couldn't get anybody to write music for it, so I finally had it published as a poem. So that's something going in the other direction. But listen, getting back to your friend, in case your friend is watching this video or listening, here's my unasked for advice. You should put it up on YouTube and even Spotify. It's easy enough to do that these days, and you can call it a demo. It doesn't have to be presented as a finished product, and that way it'll get out to the world. Have you thought of, though? I know you've done a lot of readings, but at one of your readings, maybe inviting this colleague to come and sing some of your songs.
Yeah, I think that, so I know that there's an event I'm doing in March in Nyack. They're bringing in a folk singer, and we're gonna I don't know if she's gonna do my songs, but she's gonna do songs that like go with different parts of the book. And then yeah, I think if I come out to Chicago, I will get my friend Katie to come out with her guitar.
Good.
That'd be really fun. Yeah.
Well, Tina and I will definitely come to the Nyack event, so
Yay.
I'm looking forward to that. Let's get back to the story in the book, and I always ask authors this, and it's in some ways a very annoying question because authors don't like to be asked what they're going to be doing next. But it is, I think, a question that people are always interested in. There's almost always room for a sequel in every novel. And on the other hand, it is fun to just put something aside and write something completely different. So I have no doubt you're going to be writing other novels. But do you think you're going to do a sequel to this somewhere along the line, or do you want to put this to bed and let it speak for itself?
I think if I did, I think like I would go back to this universe. I don't know if I would do a sequel with the same characters, but there are other characters in the book. Somebody wrote a review on Goodreads about like a teeny character who appears in one scene, and she was like, "I'm ready for the novel about this character." Um, so it would be fun to go back and do another book like in the same world where Mike and I kind of on purpose, like when I was working on the minor characters, because the book is so the lens on the family is really tight in the book because there are a lot of them. So there's not much room for other characters, but they do have a few friends, and and foes who show up. And I really kind of on purpose gave all those characters just little hints of their own journeys and like artistic goals. And then part of that was to show that, my characters are in this world where like everyone is pursuing a music dream, whether it's producing or making someone's, wants to make their own album, or some of them, have spiritual journeys and get sober, and things like that are happening kind of in the background while my characters are having their journeys. And so that kind of leaves room to go back and see what's up with some of the other characters.
Yeah, the Irish guy is certainly a
Yeah, exactly.
major character. Also, he's not Jewish, he's Irish, so you can
Yeah,
get a whole different thing. And
yeah.
I know that you've spent some time anyway in Ireland, in Dublin and Galway and so on, so you know Ireland firsthand.
Yeah, I was very happy. I had one of my blurbers for the British edition was Irish, and she said in her on her Instagram that I did a good job with the Irish characters and they were stereotype free. So that was very nice. So yeah, I would love to go. I mean, I love Ireland. I studied abroad there, so I would love to write about that again.
So here's a painful question, but I'm asking it because I just found out this morning, I'm always doing searches on my name, that literally today somebody wrote a scathing review of one of my novels, The Pixel Eye. I almost feel like quoting it. The most exciting part of the review is when the reviewer says, now, if I want an example of a horrible novel that was a total waste of time to read, but I figured since I had to read it, I ought to be able to write it. So that's why I'm writing the scathing review. So, but I'm used to that because every once in a while you do get those kinds of reviews. As far as I can tell, your reviews have all been laudatory, but have you gotten one review from a miscreant somewhere? And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so most of my, my on Amazon and Goodreads, like most of them have either been kind of like very positive or just like this was okay. And very few scathing ones. There was one person who said like you have to we have to stop her before she writes again or something like that. But there was a guy who wrote a review, like a professional review for I don't even remember the name of it was this very small journal that, and he thought the book he didn't his critique of the book was that he thought that, like I said that it was so unself-aware because he was saying that the sexism that I depicted in the music scene was wrong because there were also all these feminist, critics who were writing at the time so that the male critics wouldn't have been sexist, and, it was just patently untrue. I mean, there's still sexist male critics writing about female pop stars. It's something that's persisted for a long time, and I think he was referring to the fact that in the 70s, Judy has like a crisis of conscience because she gets a very like sexist write up in the Village Voice. And it is while feminism is ascendant at that moment, or in that scene, and she's also not super interested in that. She's just kind of mad. um so that was just an interesting review to get because just showing that the problem persists, I guess. But I know it's interesting, I know you've talked about we went to a book event for Rob Sheffield's book about Taylor Swift, and, at the event, Rob and I were talking about my book and how, we're, like, actually finally this year, I think is the first year where most of the Grammy nominations for Album of the Year have been women. It's taken that long, and that, even in the '90s, like, the sexism that women faced in the industry and just sort of in general, like, from the public was still a real problem, and there was just a huge number of obstacles to faith, and then it really took the Taylor Swift and, like, Beyoncé phenomenon to at least, correct some of that, and so it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it certainly hasn't been politically corrected as the results of the last.
Certainly not, yeah.
Everyone is looking for
Yeah.
a reason, trying to understand how could he have possibly won. I mean, and the answer is twice. he was running against women, and both times he managed to win. So that can't be a coincidence. By the
Certainly.
way, it is I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, no, it's certainly a big factor. There's no question about it. There was an article in The Guardian about someone who called American voters for Kamala and said that like a lot of them kind of after a while like made it clear that they were uncomfortable with being led by a woman. So,
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually think in general women are the more intelligent gender in the species. But let's get back to critics because it's something I've been thinking, having fun about for a long time. It's always very tempting when you read a negative review, and almost always they get some major facts wrong, which in a way makes you feel good because if they can't get the facts straight, it's no wonder that they're giving you a negative, review. They weren't paying too much attention when they were reading. And it's always tempting to write a response and saying, you know, you idiot, you don't even know what you're talking about. This, that, and the other thing that you say happened didn't happen. But my sense is it's always good to resist those impulses.
definitely.
You can't win an argument with a critic because as soon as you get into the argument, it shows that you as an author are being too defensive. So yeah, I'm trying to think about who it was. There is someone. Oh yeah, Phil Oakes. Actually, I was going to say Harlan Ellison, but actually it's Phil Oakes, a folk singer who, by the way, you do mention, and I was glad to see
Mhm.
in the Singer Sisters. And Phil Oakes, I can't remember whether it was on the back of an album cover or someplace. He had a thing saying, they raved about me, and he puts in like a series of like negative reviews, including one from Robert Christgau, by the way, who I try whenever I can to point out what an infuriating reviewer he is. He basically attacked Phil Oakes and he attacked Paul McCartney's albums after McCartney left the Beatles. So has he received a copy of your book? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Well, you never
You
know, but he's an old guy
never
now.
know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, he's older than me, so maybe he turned over a new leaf. Who knows? So let's talk again a little bit more about the future. So are you writing a new novel right now? Are you just thinking about it? Or
I'd say that I'm writing, but I'm not sure what it is yet. Yeah, but I am doing some writing again. But very it's still very sporadic because my writing days are Fridays. They're the day that I don't go to my office, but that also they're also everything from the week that I haven't done spills over also to Fridays, so it is challenging to have that be my only writing day. So I think once I get really into something else, I will have to, rearrange my schedule a little bit to have more time to do it. But I have been doing some Friday writings again, which is great. It feels good just to be playing around.
good. By the way, Friday Writing is a good title if you come out with like an anthology of short stories or something.
Yeah.
Has a good rig to it. Okay, so listen, any final things you want to let our listeners and viewers know about before we wrap up this interview?
Mhm. No, just that, it's a book that a lot of people are not just reading, but also giving to their family members and friends who love music. It's sort of like a great sort of gift to thing to pass from one music lover to another. And it's also very interesting, some people really identify with the 60s part, some people really identify with the 90s part, some people who were reading it were not alive during either of those times, which is just crazy to me. There's some Generation Z readers out there, for whom the 90s, were but a figment of their imagination, so, of history. But yeah, it's been super fun, I speaking of critics versus artists, I'm usually the person on the other side being a journalist, writing about books, writing about pop culture and politics. So it's been so much fun this year to be on the other side and to be the artist. So hopefully there'll be more.
Yeah, there's a, guy who unfortunately is no longer with us. His name was Neil Schulman. Interesting character. He actually wrote a couple of science fiction novels, was a libertarian in the extreme, but a very bright guy. And he actually, I think, has a whole essay about critics being parasites, that the critic can't have any existence were it not for the writer, the primary writer. And but of course, I think that's a little bit of an extreme thing. I
Yeah.
think critical writing is a genre in itself, and it's a very useful genre, certainly. So listen, it was a pleasure talking to you. We'll see each other soon,
Yep.
with babies,
Yeah.
grandkids. Yeah. We'll have to, we ordinarily we talk for another hour, but we have to get going.
You have some babysitting to do, so I can go see
That's
the Bob
right.
Dylan movie. So there you
That's
go.
right. Lucky you. Tina and I aren't going to see it until tomorrow, so don't give anything away.
Okay. Oh yeah, we won't tell you whether he goes electric or not.
Okay, thanks. Listen, when you have a chance, send me a list of all of your forthcoming appearances, and I will put that into the show notes,
Sure.
both on YouTube and in the audio podcast, so listeners and viewers in those areas can come see you and listen to you. By the way, you do readings from the book, or you just talk about the book, or both?
I think I'm gonna mostly be talking at some of them and some readings. I haven't quite figured it all out yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with all
Funny
of that.
place that's hosting it. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
Take care.
Paul.
Bye bye.
Did you hear the kids?
No, I did. Let me
Okay,
hear
good.
them now. No,
No, they're being
they,
they're being quite loud in the other room, so I was a little bit.
listen, Zoom is very good when it comes to that. You can hear somebody screaming their head off, and as long as they're not standing like pretty much right in front of wherever the microphone is, Zoom doesn't pick it up. So
Good.
this is
I don't know. They're like chanting. They're like running around singing and chanting and having a good time. So
well, good. Maybe I'll introduce
not
them.
banging on the door.
By the way, have a good time in Puerto Rico also.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. See you in
All right,
about an hour and a half.
an hour or so. Take care.
Bye
Hour and a half.
bye.